Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this Institute for Study Abroad IFSA webinar about applying to study abroad and how it's not necessarily the same as applying to college. We're glad you could join us today. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes I wanted to share. First, we are recording this webinar and it will be made available later to you via link. If you have to leave the presentation for any reason, just know that that recording will be coming your way. Also, we want to ensure the sound quality of the recording, so just take a moment to make sure that your microphone is muted so we can make sure that everyone watching this in the future has great access to the audio. And lastly, we know that you'll probably encounter some questions throughout the presentation, and we will be addressing those at the very end. But if you encounter any throughout the presentation, you can type them into the question box there in the toolbar at any time, and we will do our very best to make it to all of those questions at the end. So let's get started. My name is Emma Robinson, and I'll be walking through today a few items about the study abroad application process. First, we will go through that application process and what it looks like and the steps for that. Next, we'll go through navigating the IFSA student portal that you'll be using for that application process, and then I'll do a quick demo about that as well. And then I'll go into more about the role of your program advisor at IFSA and how they will assist you through the process. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some time for some questions at the end.
The very first step to begin your application is to navigate to the IFSA website, IFSA-Butler.org, and click the Apply Now button to get started. You might encounter a screen that looks a little bit different than this, but it will take you through a series of registration questions so you can get started.
As soon as you've completed that registration and picked your program, you'll come to a screen that looks pretty similar to this, which is the Apply section of the student portal. Here you'll see all of the items that we'll need in order to submit your application to your host university or program. So these are some common items that you'll likely find there. One is a class interest form where you record some of the classes that you hope to take when you go abroad. We'll need a copy of your passport, and then also program approval from your home institution, study abroad office, a copy of your official transcript, addresses, and then a couple signatures on the agreements and releases form. Now, the items that you see here will vary depending upon your program and what your host university or program needs in order to make an admissions decision, but these are by far the most common items that you'll encounter. And the great part is that when you're in the student portal, you can click on each of these items to see the details of each and how to submit each one with very detailed instructions. Here's a broader view of that same screen where you can see a couple of other different application items you might encounter, like an unofficial transcript, perhaps a language evaluation, and some other items that might be required. Once you've completed all of those application items that you see there in the portal, they'll show that green check mark with complete, and that's how you know that you're done with all of those items. Your program advisor will then process your application. We get a notification when we've completed all those items that prompts us to send those off to the host institution or to your program for further inspection and to receive an admissions decision back. So there's no need for you to apply directly to your host institution. That's part of IFSA's services to you and why we collect these items. So once your program advisor has submitted this application on your behalf, you'll receive an email notice to let you know, and that will also give you an approximate time frame of when to expect an admissions decision. So as you're awaiting that admissions decision from your program, that's where step number 4 comes in. There might be a few additional items that show up for you in the IFSA portal in that application area, and those are things you can work on as you await that admissions decision. Typical items will include things like a photo that can be used on your student ID, a personal essay, and sometimes some other items for your host institution. And most commonly, this is where you'll find the IFSA learning plan as well. This is a great tool that you can use to record some of your goals for your time abroad that you can chat with your study abroad advisor or your IFSA program advisor. And step 5, your program advisor will be in touch as soon as they have an admissions decision to share with you, and that will include some next steps of what to do. So once you receive the news about your admissions decision, you'll get that email from your advisor with those instructions, one of which is to complete your student acceptance agreement and your medical form within 10 days of receiving that acceptance notice. There will be some other items you'll need to complete at that time too to accept your place, so just pay attention to any due dates listed along with those items in the student portal there. And then after that, and you've accepted your place and everything's great, your program advisor will then follow up with you in the coming weeks and months with some instructions for booking your flight, if you need a visa, instructions for that, possibly enrollment instructions as well, and then also a series of pre-arrival newsletters to help get you prepared for your time abroad with some great tips with everything from money to banking to packing and everything in between. So before we move on to talk more about the IFSA application process, just wanted to take a moment for those of you who are students just to see how many colleges or universities you applied to before accepting your offer for the university or college that you're attending presently. As you're answering that, you can see from what we've covered so far that the process of applying to study abroad is pretty different than when you first applied to a college or university that you're studying at now. So curious to see how many of you apply to many, many different places or few. The answers were all over the board there. So as I said before, you can tell that the study abroad process is really quite different than the process you use to apply for colleges or universities that you're attending now. Hopefully the process will be quite a bit easier and shorter for you than when you applied to many, many colleges before, or even just one. It can be a pretty extensive process. And the good news is with IFSA study abroad programs, if you meet the minimum requirements, there's really no need to apply for a backup program. There are really only very special cases where multiple applications to different programs are needed, and usually it's only for really competitive programs. For example, University of Oxford. There are tips for picking a program if you're not sure how to go about doing that. Those are in the resources area there on in the toolbar for you. And we also have a great tool called Global Wayfinder that you can use to narrow down that program search and start with your top choice program when you are taking on this application process. So these top 3 application tips, like I said, in most cases, there's really no need to apply to multiple programs unless you're applying to somewhere very competitive. The IFSA program advisors, I mentioned that a couple times throughout this presentation, and they're really there to support you. So they'll be there through every step of that process that we just went through, and they're to support you leading up to your time abroad. So really a great support network for you and services available before you even get on the plane. Plus, there are lots of resources within the IFSA student portal. So that's what we're going to take a look at next, is kind of going through the IFSA portal and a little bit more about what that looks like. Here's that login page that you saw before, where once you have started your application, you'll use that student login area to sign in with the login details you created. Once you've logged in, you'll come to this screen here. Pretty similar to one you saw before, but here you can see an application that's in progress. So you can see the student, for example, has started their personal essay, has completed a couple items like their transcript and addresses, and then still has a few other items to complete. And this screen will be where, in those previous steps, this is where you complete those application items. There will be new ones to work on as you await an admissions decision, and then new ones will come up once you have your admissions decision. So this will be a great hub of activity for you. There on the left side, you'll see more about your program advisor. This is the lovely Jen McKibben, who works with a lot of our Latin America programs and other programs around the world. So you can schedule a call with her, watch a video to learn more about her and how she can help you. And then there's also a button there where you can add an IFSA scholarship application. That will add another tile to the screen there with the application that you can then complete. That's completely optional and separate from the other application items and won't affect your eligibility for a program or your program advisor's ability to submit your application once those other items are complete. But obviously a great thing to take advantage of if you're looking to apply for some scholarship funds. Next, in the top navigation bar there, I moved on to the resources area. And this is an area of the portal that I feel like sometimes students can overlook, but it's got a really great wealth of knowledge that will be very useful for you as you're filling out those application items and then preparing to go abroad. So here you'll see some program details that will include program dates and other events that will take place throughout the semester once those have been finalized. There's some cost of attendance details and then also helpful documents and links. Your program advisor will probably continue to add documents into that area as you go through the process, and they might refer back to those. So great place to look for up-to-date information. So within that cost of attendance sub-tab in the resources area, this is where you can view program fees, any supplemental fees, and then also the estimated out-of-pocket expenses for things that aren't included in the program fees. So that's typically things like your flight, if you have to apply for a visa, things like meals when you're on the ground, and books and items like that. So this will obviously look very different for each program depending where you're applying, but it's a great hub of information for budgeting and for planning for those future expenses. There's also, in the next tab, there will be a budget planner that you'll be able to download. So let's go on to that next part. So here in the helpful documents and links section is where you can find things like that budget planner. That will usually be an Excel document that's updated per term for programs, so you can get a really good idea of what things will cost in your host country. There's also a lot of expandable things that you'll see at the top there. I always recommend checking out the academic section for help with selecting classes when you're filling out your course preference form, for example. And then there will also be some other items in here, mainly our inclusive student resources. You'll be able to find some different resources for different types of identities and how that relates to your host culture. So really a lot of great information in this resource area. Also in the top navigation, you'll see a button for social media. This is where you can click to see the latest social media feeds from IFSA and what students around the world. Here's some additional portal features that you'll find from that main menu. So in the applications drop-down, you'll see a few different things here. Registration is the button you can use if you need to change any of those registration details from when you first started your application. Select program, you will really only use that if you need to apply to a different program. Maybe you've changed your mind about where you'd like to go. Your program advisor can also help you open up that other application and get your items switched over. The application area, that's where that shows those tiles of what you need to complete for your application. And that last kind of circulating arrow there is switch application. So this is the button you'd use, for example, if you're applying to a backup program. Now, as I noted before, it's not necessary to apply to multiple programs unless you're applying to somewhere that's very competitive. Again, your program advisor would advise you as to whether or not that would be necessary. But that's where you'd switch between them if you do have multiple applications. Next is the Account tab under your name. So if you click your name, when you're in the portal, there should be that Account button underneath the profile area. That's where things will display like your program billing information when it becomes available. And then also it's where you can change any addresses that you have on file with us. So if you move mid-semester or perhaps your home address changes, that's where you can update that. And it's very important that we do have accurate addresses for you. So at the end of your program, we know where to send your transcript information. And then once you receive your admissions decision and you've selected housing and that housing has been assigned to you, an additional tab will show up there in the top menu area called the On-Site tab. That will display some information about your housing assignment that's been made to you, like the address and some other important details. So that will be something that will show only during that time of the application. So let's take a look at this student portal in a little bit more of a live format. I personally like seeing things as they will be displayed to me instead of just screenshots. So let's dive into that.
All right, let's take a live look at the IFSA portal now to go through a couple of the things that I've shown you. There are a few different ways to access the portal from our website. This is our new homepage. And if you already have an existing application, you can click this login button to sign in. If you need to begin your application for the first time, you can go to My Application. And I would recommend just bookmarking this page if you do start an application so you can get back into it. You might also come across this student portal login page. If you're just starting, you would begin your application here by selecting if you do already know which program you want to go to, or if you're not sure where you want to go. That'll take you to our search tool to help you find a program that'll work for you. And then if you do already have an account, you can click there to log in. So once you are logged in, you'll come to a screen similar to this once you've started your application. So this looks pretty similar to a lot of the things that we just went through, right? Here are the application items for you to complete. You can click on each one to get instructions to let you know how to complete that item. Once you have completed it, the status will show as completed here at the bottom. You've got some great information about your program advisor over here. And then there's your toolbar up here at the top. You can access chart if you want to search for some specific classes. You can use this application drop-down to complete or go back to your registration, to select a program if you haven't already. To access your application, that would take you to this page to show you the items to complete. Or if you do have multiple applications, in the case that you are applying to a competitive program and need a backup, you would use this switch application button to go between those two applications that you have. I also mentioned the resources tab. This is a more live look at what that tab will show you. When program dates are finalized, they'll show here in the program details. You can access cost of attendance information here, including estimated out-of-pocket costs, so things that aren't included with the program fees. And then also this helpful documents and links section is a really great resource before, during, and after completing your application. So the things like academics tab will show you tips for finding courses at your program of choice. There's some information about housing, safety, medical items. So a really great place to go if you're having questions. That's a great resource for you. There are also linked resources here that will vary per program and might have some things for you to complete there that your program advisor would prompt you to do as well. So great hub of activity here in the resources section. And then in the social area, this is where you'll see the latest from our social media channels. You can keep up with students who are abroad, who have recently been abroad, and see some of their photographs for some inspiration for your own journey. Lastly, you'll see this section here with a little avatar that will show your name. This is just a sample for our purposes today. But this drop-down will have your profile information. That includes the addresses. You can update at any time if you do move. These are important for us to have so we know where to send your transcript at the end of the program, where to send any billing information and those items. So you can always access those addresses here if you need to update them. Later, it will show an accounts tab. Once you've been accepted to your program, that's where payments will happen. And then also at the top here, in this toolbar, once you've been accepted, there will be an on-site tab that will show some additional information like your housing placement and other things. So again, really great hub of activity here for you in the student portal.
So I've mentioned program advisors a few times throughout this entire application process. So who are program advisors? Really the simple answer is that they're your main point of contact throughout this whole application process, and they'll help you prepare for your time abroad as well. So a few of the things that they help with are chats whenever you need it to help with some of those questions that might come up. So whether that's wondering about your host culture and some items dealing with that, or you need help finding classes for that class interest form, we help with all of those things and anything else in between as you're working on your application. Once we have that application items from you in the student portal, I mentioned before, we send those on to the host university on your behalf. So you don't have to try to navigate another application system. We do that for you. And then obviously we share the outcome and admissions decision with you. And then after that, we help you prepare to go abroad by sharing things like those visa instructions, the flight booking details, and then that pre-arrival series I mentioned. We also help with any other important university processes that you might need to take on before you arrive in your host country. So typically that's things like enrollment. It might be uploading a photo for your ID card or something like that. And we make sure that you don't miss any of those important processes before you go. We're also the main point of contact for parents before and during their students' time abroad. So if there are any questions that come up for parents or family members or guardians during that time, we are also here to help support them. All right, so that is a quick overview of the study abroad application process with IFSA, the Institute for Study Abroad. So we hope that's been really helpful for you, but I know there are probably some questions that have come up. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and type your questions into that question chat box, and we will start getting to those here shortly.
Okay, I can see that we have some questions coming in here. And to help me answer some of these questions today, my colleague Jennifer McKibben is here with us. So she's going to jump in and help answer some of these. So the first one I see is, where do I find the program fees? Good question. I know that fees are top of mind for a lot of students. So you can find those in the student portal under the resources tab. There is a sub-tab called Cost of Attendance. So you can reference the fees there once they've been finalized. Also, you can see those on our website as well when they've been finalized. They will post to each individual program page in the dates and fees area. To go with that, I know a lot of students also ask about scholarships and financial aid. In the resources area at the bottom of your screen, you can expand that, and there are some helpful links there, one of which is our scholarships and financial aid page. So definitely recommend looking at that too. Let's see, we've got a couple of other questions. So let's see what else we have. This is a good one. How long does it take to hear back once my application has been submitted? That's a good question. So once you do complete all those items in the student portal, your advisor will submit those on your behalf. And it really varies per program as to how long it might take to hear back from the host institution or the program about your admissions decision. That can be a quick turnaround time. We do have some rapid response programs that are pretty quick, usually 2 days to about a week's time to hear back. And then there are some programs that are more competitive where it can take several weeks or even a couple months to hear back. But when your application is submitted, you'll get a notification email to let you know the approximate time frame for your specific program. And Jennifer, I think we've got a couple other questions here that have come in.
Yeah, let me take a look here. So next I see, what do I do once all of my application items are complete? Is there a submit button? It's another really good question. So in the student portal, once you finish all of your items, they will each check green and say complete as you're working on them. And then once the initial ones are done, the message will change and let you know that your application is being reviewed and submitted. So there's not an actual submit button, it will just change in your portal, and then your program advisor will get notified, and they'll review all of your application items to make sure everything's in order before we submit that to your host school. And if there are any issues, we would be sure to let you know so you could make any changes before we would submit it. And let's see here. Oh, I see another question here. So are your programs running for spring 2021, and when will you know? Another really great question, and I'm sure on the top of everyone's mind as well. So we have recently created some really great resources on our coronavirus page. So in the On24 section, you can look under the resource list at the bottom. It will link to the coronavirus section of our website. So that's a good place to reference for the most up-to-date data. And what you'll actually find there are a couple of things. So first, you'll find our withdrawal policy, which is going to be really flexible for the spring. So there's different dates by country by which you can withdraw and not incur any fees. Including that we would refund anything you paid to IFSA, including our non-refundable deposit. So just keep an eye on those dates. And then also on the other side of that, when will we know if our programs are running? We have what's called the IFSA decision date. And so again, each country will have a specific date that you can find on our coronavirus page. And on that date or by that date, you will know if your program is moving forward for spring 2021. So IFSA would notify you. And if for some reason it's not moving forward, we would give alternative options and next steps and help talk through that with you. Let's see. So the majority of our programs are set to run for spring, so just keep an eye on there as updates do come out. You can check those. Yeah, and it's just a great resource to continually check back on. Let's see, and I don't see any other questions coming in right now. But if you do have a question as you're watching the recording, which we'll be sending out here shortly, but if other questions do come up, you can feel free to follow up with your program advisor and let us know how we can help you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to wrap up now, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks so much.